morning and good afternoon to our audience. Today, my guest is Ricus. He is the founder of Makor Resources. Ricus, it's a pleasure to have you here with me. Thank you for hopping on this call. Please introduce yourself and your business and a little bit about what you guys do.
Thank you very much, and Jorge. It's a wonderful pleasure to be with you, and thanks for the opportunity to have a chat. I really appreciate that. Yes, my name's Ricus Grimbeek, and I founded Makor Resources about 5 years ago with my partner, Brooke Bibbold. I've been in mining for, sorry to say, but more than 32 years. I'm great for a reason. I've also, spent my mining career in major companies. I worked in BHP and Vale and South 32, and that kind of informed and formed me a lot as an individual. I've worked in so many countries. I one day should sit down and write it all down. But I've all the way from Colombia, Chile, Peru, Canada, Australia, South Africa, Burkina Faso, Zambia, Malawi. So Australia, yeah. So a whole host of different countries and cultures that I lived in, and then also different commodities. Everything. I started in gold mining, did platinum, coal, nickel, basically manganese, anything you can think of. I did, except iron ore, the one commodity I never operated in. So yeah, I've got an extensive mining background, but I would say a rebel with a cause, always been a bit of a misfit in the industry, because I totally believe that we can do much better as an industry. And, there's no greenwashing that will make what we do look great. I know there's a lot of companies that are doing some really good work, but, as a whole, I think, and I've always been very vocal about the fact that, we should become a lot more sustainable, a lot more connected to the communities, and also give more back to where we take minerals from. I've been a very big advocate for the fact that mining is not sustainable, and people get very angry when I say that. But the reality is, we take things out, we don't put it back, and there's always a finite life when it comes to mining, because once you've depleted the ore body, then there's something that you leave behind. And to me, there's a huge opportunity for even the large mining companies to take an inward look and see what it is they leave behind after they close down some of these mines. I'm passionate about mining. I'm passionate about doing it the right way. And halfway through my career, I actually looked after health, safety, environment, community, and sustainability for BHP Billiton worldwide, and that was quite a profound opportunity for me. And I'm still very grateful that I was given that opportunity, because it really fit very nicely into my passion. The reason I started Makor Resources with my partner is mainly because I realized that there's a huge gap in the market. There's artisanal and small-scale mining, and I'll be very specific about that, because they're two very different things. When I was in the large-scale mining business, I saw artisanal and small-scale miners as a problem, until one day I realized that they're not a problem. There's actually amazing people that work extremely hard, and that it is very, very difficult for them to get a leg up in this industry for many reasons. And firstly, I would say, because when I say the word artisanal and small scale, most people think it's illegal. They think child labor, just very negative things. And I've come to realize that that's a big fallacy. And also then from the flip side is that there's a huge opportunity as well. All the big, large ore bodies have basically been found, and if they haven't been found, there's not a lot left to be found. So a lot of what we are going to mine in the future will come from smaller scale type of operations, and that needs to be done differently. It can't be done the same way as some of the large scale mines are being pulled today. And then the other part is that this artisanal and small scale mining sector makes up between 40 to 45 million people actually working in that sector around the world. And that makes up about 90% of the mining workforce. If you then take a step back and say, that the large mining companies out there only represent about 10% of the mining workforce in the world, there's a huge gap. And there's a need to really step in and find ways and solutions to support those industries. And from my point of view, it's not a donation or a feel-good thing only. This is actually economically super important. We're at the start of another super cycle in the industry. The world needs commodities more than they've ever done for the transition to the energy transition that we want, the shift to digital. All these things will need a huge amount of of metals in the next couple of decades. And so it's super exciting. And we play in that small mid-tier parts that very few people are able to play. So yeah, that's a short introduction.
Absolutely. And it's amazing because it sounds like you are provisioning the resources and the materials needed to build mines in a sustainable way from small scale to medium scale. So tell me, there's a lot of passion behind this business model and this idea. What are we trying to solve in particular for these small miners? Like, what are they doing wrong that they should be doing?
Yeah, that's a great question. Firstly, I'd say the majority of them do nothing wrong. They just in a very old sector with very specific rules around funding, and also, in the previous life, I also ran what I would call a mid-tier mining company, so like $400 million type of
Yes,
company. And I found it extremely hard to find money or banks and investors to fund even a $400 million company with, tier one, or not tier one, but like world-class type of operating standards. If you go to some of the small-scale mines and some of the artisanal mines and you walk onto site, you would get a little bit of a fright if you come from like a BHP world, because it's not the same standard of equipment and procedures and planning. And there's a massive gap in training and supporting those operations to get to the standards from a safety and environmental and health perspective. But it's not because people are bad. It's more because they just, firstly, a lot of times don't know, and secondly, don't have access to the right tools or equipment. But I think one of the biggest challenges is the access to funding. The funding model in mining, if you're out there and I haven't studied it yet, it is very rigid. So if you want to fund a mine, you need people willing to give you money to do exploration. When you do exploration, we're talking for a mid-time mining company, tens of millions of dollars. So it's not, this is not chump change.
very expensive.
Um, and even for a small scale mines, I'm working in Zambia on small scale mines that are between 400 to 900 hectares big. To do the most basic of exploration, flying aeromags, doing some ground sampling, doing a couple of drill holes, you're looking at least $1 million. And that is funding that you need to get from people without any guarantee. So there's nothing other than a mining license and maybe a team that you can feel confident in, that a bank or an institution or private investors need to give money to. And that's very hard, especially if you go there and say, I've got a small scale mining license. So as I said earlier, the moment you say those words, most people think, oh, it's either illegal or it's like chump change, small, it's not important, can't do something decent. Yeah, so from a funding point, really, really difficult for people to get that initial funding to start the exploration. The second part is that to get decent funding, if you want to build a small scale mine, so the ones that I've just worked on in Zambia, you need at least $4 to $7 million to get going. That's to buy the equipment or to get the basic infrastructure in place, like the roads and the dams and the planning and the drilling and all that. So 4 to 10 million, that's what you need. To get that funding, again, you need to have drilled out an ore resource, because no one is going to give you funding in today's structures unless you can prove that you've got X amount of tons of either gold or copper or nickel in the ground, drilled out to a certain standard. Now, not only does it cost a lot of money to do these things, it also takes a huge amount of time. So I'm working with another company in Zambia that have started 12 years ago with a drilling program. They've spent close to $30 million on the drilling program, and they've declared their first maiden resource last year, and they will be able to declare something where they can get decent funding in 18 months from now. So you're looking at 12 to 15 years, maybe 25 to $30 million to get a mine going. There's no small scale mining owner out there that I know, that I've met, that's got 10 million, $20 million to put into the development of these mines. This is like the source of the problem, because then what happens is, as a small scale miner, as an artisanal miner, People just have to get to cash flow as quickly as possible. But the challenge is because you don't have the right mine planning, you haven't done the right exploration, you haven't done the right mine designs, you're not using the right equipment and the right techniques, you're going to mine yourself into a hole. So, it is a bit of
Literally.
a literally going to mine yourself into a hole. And then because you're chasing a vein, you're not doing all this ore stripping that you need to do because that costs money that doesn't pay. So people chase the cash flow, get themselves into lots of trouble. Then those pits have to be abandoned. And then investors come in and look at that and say, oh no, this is terrible. I'm not going to put a cent into this. So that's the source of the problem is the funding models. It's also the skill levels. And then, so that's the one source. The other thing is, a country like Zambia is actually very, very far advanced when it comes to legislation. So they've got legislation where you can register an artisanal mine, you can register a small-scale mine. So artisanal mine is up to 10 hectares in size. Small-scale mine is up to 900 hectares in size. And to just give you a sense of just completed building a mine in Zambia that is on 400 hectares, and it produces 80,000 tons a month. So it's not small. So it's like that is a decent sized mine, and it's got average copper grades of like 1%. So it really is not a small back of the envelope type of mine. But Zambia allows for these operations to be legally permitted, licensed, and it's also checked by the authorities. You need your environmental plans, and you need all the labor plans and everything in place. The challenge we have is like in countries next door to that, in other parts of Africa, it's impossible to register a small-scale mine. So you can only register a large-scale operation. And the challenge with that, it's expensive to do. Why would you go and spend a lot of money to register a 10,000 hectare piece of land if you can, you only need 10 hectares as an artisanal miner? So what you then have is if people can't do this legally, they get into the trap of digging out some gold, producing it, but it's not legal, and then they are totally exposed to the illegal trading market because people come to them and say, I'll give you half the rate for gold today because you can't sell this legally, so I'll take it. And they then trade with that. And we have a lot of that happening across Africa. So, and the other thing is that because these people don't have like big bank balances behind them, big balance sheets behind them, they end up basically hand to mouth. So whatever they produce, they have to sell by the end of the day, by the end of the week. Otherwise, then they go and belly up. So that's the challenge that we sit with. The opportunity is huge because what we designed in Makor, we call it the hubology model. So we create hubs, processing hubs, and we then get a couple of small scale and artisanal mines to feed those processing hubs. One of the biggest negatives in countries in Africa is that people actually build processing facilities without that being connected to a mine or an ore body. So, and it might sound like, well, you said you're doing this with your hubs. Well, the thing is, we connect each one of our processing plants to specific mines, and the owners of those mines are also owners in the processing plant. And the problem that we sit with is that we have lots of illegitimate trading happening in copper, nickel, and zinc, whatever metal you can think of, where people build like really dirty, cheap and dirty smelting, refining plants, and they then buy from whomever and wherever material that they treat in these plants. And there's no responsibility linked to that at all. And that's also where people steal material from other mines. So that's one of the problems that we have to deal with across the board as well. Yeah, so we create these processing hubs. We then get the mines to supply that. The owners of the mines, as I said, are also pulled in as owners in the processing facility. The other thing that we do, and is you and I spoke about this last week, is creating a very clear line of site transparency between where material is produced and the customers. Because we, as you know, that in your phone, in this computer, even using the cloud, you are using metals. You are using copper, you're using cobalt, you're using lithium, nickel. And the question is, where is that coming from? Do you know where your metals and your resources are coming from. Because there is, I think it's at the moment 25% of the world's gold is mined in small scale sector or in the artisanal sector, and most of them that is done illegally, sold illegally. I think it's 20% of the world's tin is mined like that. A big portion of the world's cobalt is mined by illegal operators. That involves child labor, a whole bunch of very, very nasty things that are happening. How do you know what you buy, your car, your Tesla, even your Ford and your iPhone, where do the metals come from? And so that's what we do. We create very clear transparency. We track and trace where the metal comes from in the ground all the way through to the end user. And we want to expand those platforms so that more and more people can buy legally mined, responsibly mined, sustainably mined products.
ESG paradox, no? Where the very rules that are there to ensure sustainability are the ones that are driving the unsustainable behavior. So it just sounds like a predicament that seems a little difficult to solve. These investors, these government entities, they won't invest in a mining operation that doesn't have the ore ready and processed, and they show, okay, I have this, you know? But doing a drill hole can cost, I'm not sure in Zambia, but at least over here on this side, it costs hundreds of thousands of dollars, like just one hole, you know, and that's just the hole, not even the sampling, you know, the magnetic sampling or the core geological processing. So, anyways, you have your platform, and I'm sure you receive a lot of volume and so many proposals of mines. When you're qualifying these, let's say you have a qualified project that you say, okay, that's rentable, I will go through with that. What is the process beginning that mining operation, getting them this funding?
Yeah, it's a very good question. As an ESG project, what we do as Makor is we created MineHive. So MineHive is a free platform and we do like monthly webinars. MineHive is anyone who is a small scale artisanal miner, that's a supplier, that's a consumer, anyone that wants to participate in these conversations can join. And inside MineHive, we create what we call the hatchery. So the hatchery is where exactly what you're pointing to. They've got a mine license. Some of them actually have mines that are operating, but they're short of capital. They don't have access to markets. They don't have access to the right skills. They come into the hatchery, and that's where we support them. So we created a pool of people around the world that we can tap into at any time to help us either do designing an exploration program, because there's some really clever people out there today, and they actually we use some of the same technology using satellite imagery now to do like an initial assessment of a mining tenement to give you a sense of structure, the potential for magnetic ore-bearing reefs, areas that you might find metals based on the different satellite images that they get. So we start with that because that's not that expensive. You don't have to be physically on the ground. There's no holes going into the ground, and so that's one way. The other way is in some countries like Zambia just recently flew. The whole country has been flown by aeromagnetic samples or planes. So they've got aeromagnetic data of every single square kilometer of the country. So that's available. So what we then do is we know we've got good relationships with the government. We then access that data on behalf of the owners. So we overlay the satellite imagery with the aeromag data that we get from the government. If that shows potential, and a lot of times it does, we would then send teams to go onto the ground. And then you start doing some ground sampling, soil sampling, the cheaper type of exploration testing. And also some of these, as I said, some of them actually already mining. So they've got ore exposed. So we would then go and take samples, but in a scientific way, not just try and grab the rocks that shines the most or the ones that look like it's the best grade. Actually do like a very systemic process to do the sampling. So we get more of a representative feel for what that looks like. And then we use that data to come back and say, okay, if you overlay all of this, there seems to be a real potential or not. And both answers are really important, because if someone brings something to us and when we look at it and we've done all our testing and we feel there's like a very small opportunity to build an economic mine there, we tell people that, because the last thing you want to do is to waste people's time and waste people's effort and a little bit of money that they have on something that's not going to pay you anything. So it's better for them to know early on. This is where, I've been working with companies in Australia, private investors. We're also looking at some institutional investors that are now looking like there's support to come to the party and support us to be able to fund some and do some of the pre-funding. Because again, as I said earlier, it's there's no opportunity to bring a bankable feasibility study for some of these operations. So we need to get pre-funding to get it to a certain level, and it might not ever come to the same level of what a large scale like a BHP would bring to the market in terms of drilling out. You're not investing hundreds of millions. You might be investing $2 or $3 million. So your risk profile is much lower for that $2 or $3 million. And with the right technical team behind it, and with the right, if you've done a due diligence, and that's what we do, we use our technology called Sensor 360. We check for environmental damage, we check for community issues, we check for license validity, any outstanding legal issues on the license, make sure that the local community has signed off on that operation. So if you invest money, at least all those boxes have been ticked, and we will say to you, there's real potential using our criteria that we can find something economical. So then there are people out there that are willing to then put some money at risk and take it to the next step. There's also a huge amount of education that we do with local license holders, because in some countries, the moment they get a license, they think they are rich because they now have a mining license. And they see dollars because they get told that, you've got a license. This is like worth millions and millions of dollars. So there's
Can't
a
blame
lot
them.
of, yeah, I totally understand their feeling, but you've got to get them to understand the economic value is only when it's mined one day. And if you can invest the money to get it to the point where it can be mined, and you can produce the metal, the gemstone out of it, then you can actually turn it into a very valuable asset. And there's a lot of education to do where, as investors come in, they're not just going to give you $1 million and then just say, well, I'll give you $1 million back next year. That's not how investment works. And if people invest at risk, they want a decent return. So a lot of times owners will have to give away some equity for the initial investment. So people come in, they will give $1 or $2 million, but then they want 10 or 20% equity stake in the mine. What we do is we help the owners make sure that they don't get taken to the cleaners, because I've also seen where this happens. People with money come in, they take an equity stake, and then once it starts ramping up, they just dilute the owners out of it, because owners cannot come up with the matching capital development cost. So as the people with money then put another 5 million in, they look at the license holder and say, okay, where's your 5 million? And if they can't give that, then they dilute them down to very small numbers. So we do a lot of the initial, testing in the hatchery, coming up with, we believe this is something economical or not. And if it's something economical, we will now, I'm quite confident that we will get the right investors behind us to do this more and more now. We've done a couple, but we need bigger numbers behind us to do this. And I can tell you, I've got like 50, 60 of these projects lined up, ready to be funded. There's like so many opportunities, and it's in metals like copper. Everyone wants to be in copper. Well, we can show you operations that you can invest in copper. So, and then there's a lot of work on the other side to do as well with, the owners who a lot of times don't understand all these, terms like bankable feasibilities and equity investments and all that. They've got no idea what you're talking about. So you've got to help them through that process as well.
Huge help for these mining operations that are small. Maybe how do you find these millions of dollars of funding to start your operation? What is the process? So I love it. I love your strategy. It's a great service that you're providing for sustainability and just assuring the governance. Please tell me a little bit more about Mind Hive, Sensor 360. You and your partner have this amazing stack of services. Please tell our listeners from your perspective, what does that mean for business growth? How do you see your business growing, and what will help you grow? Investors, awareness.
We need to get the message out there, the message around small scale and artisanal miners being done responsibly, and also feeding the huge need for metals and minerals in the future. That message needs to get out there, that people can understand that you can do this responsibly. You can actually put money into something And it's not about not getting anything back. This is like investing money in any type of mining operation. It's just done a bit differently. So it's not the same as the large scale old style type of mining. So we've done a lot of work, and I'm off to Australia again at the end of the week. A lot of work talking to investors in Australia, and I think we are definitely getting to the point where there are more and more people jumping on board now, saying they trust our process, they trust our system. We've demonstrated. We've recently completed a mine. We took a small scale mine and we turned it into, as I said, a mine that's supplying a large scale company with really good quality material. We've demonstrated it can be done responsibly. I think there's some credibility behind, the team of people that we've put together. If we can get more access to the financial markets, that the challenge is always financial markets are tied to certain reporting codes. And, so for example, in Australia, you need qualified ore body before you can say you've got so much metal. So any company that's listed, their hands are kind of tied. They cannot tell investors that they've got like 100,000 tons of copper in the ground unless a competent person has done a assessment. There's enough drilling, and the drilling is spaced closely enough so that someone can actually make a call to say that metal is in the ground. I think listed companies struggle with that, but I don't think it should hold them back. Investors can make up their own mind. They can choose to say, we actually want a more high risk fund to invest in these small scale mines, because I can tell you now, to get into copper mining in any large scale environment is basically impossible today in terms of the cost and what you have to pay, and also how long you've got to wait to get production.
Oh,
I can get a small scale mine from licensing, permitting, designing, basic exploration, up and running from day one, and give me 2 years and you in production. Where large scale mines, 12, 15 years if you're lucky. We can produce a lot more of the critical metals that the world now needs a lot faster. But we need a different risk profile investor to be willing to put money into that.
saving 10 years and millions of dollars in exploration and investment is very valuable. So I love it. What is exactly working for you? You said your partners in marketing. What new strategies then are you looking to discover? Where do your clients come from? What's working for you?
My partner is like, she on Instagram, you can go and have a look. She's a massive following. 5, 6 years ago, I said to her, we really have to get onto LinkedIn. Because LinkedIn, I think, from a business perspective, is quite important. Now she's basically at the same level as me and like overtaking me on LinkedIn. But I think that's a great platform. It's a good place to get the story out. We believe in supporting other people's platforms because then they support our platform. We need to grow the pie of getting the messages out there. And I think it's so important. Jumping on board, doing more network marketing, talking to more and more people, also looking outside the normal sphere. And the other thing we did, we started our own podcast. We had the podcast, we had people on, and we would ask questions about, the one lady that was on, we asked her about diamonds, because she's a guru in marketing, and we talked about marketing of diamonds, and the person, she didn't even know that diamonds were mined. So, and then, so
Wow.
it's getting the message out on more platforms, talking about this arenas where people normally do not talk about that. And it's amazing how just making people aware, how they then connect you to other people who need to know the same things and want to talk about the same things. We're not about small scale artisanal miners. We're about responsibly mined and sustainably mined metal that we can demonstrate source. It makes a difference. It makes a difference in the community where it comes from, in the country where it comes from.
Is there a requirement to work with you guys? Do you operate off of just a specific region? Is there a requirement that someone has to meet in order to be considered as a potentially feasible mining operation?
No, so we are currently on Mine Art. We've got people from all over the world. We've got people from Indonesia, from Chile, from Peru, Colombia, a lot of African countries. The model is it's not complicated. It just needs committed people to drive it. I'm willing to. It's not even licensed. I'll give it away to people. If there's someone like me sitting in Peru or in Colombia that wants to take my knife and run it and build a incubator there for people, absolutely take it over. We can connect. I can show you. I can help you, because the pie is so big. As I said, there's between 40 to 45 million people in this industry. and they're underserved like you can't believe. So there's a huge opportunity to build this platform out, but it's not just one country at all.
The inclusion, being able to help them with their compliance of the legal and governance requirements. So I love it. It's a great product, great service in the grand scope of mining, whether it's in the logistics sector or analytics of sampling, or even just in communication and marketing. Where do you see artificial intelligence coming in and playing a part to boost the efficiency?
That's a great question, and I think the industry is absolutely right, basically at every intersection. So, from exploration, and there are companies like Cobalt. I don't know if you follow them, but they use AI quite extensively on exploration data, using AI not just to look at data and piecing together different types of data and coming up with predictive models, but also once you take the core samples. So when you drill, you take a core out. These days, if you're not, you should definitely be doing it. You should be digitally photographing as it comes out, and that can immediately upload into the cloud. You can run all your predictive models on, coming up with grades and predictive grades and possible structures immediately, as opposed to taking months, all the way through to using AI on the logistics side. Ability to dispatch things to different mines, something as simple as quicklime, just using AI to the cheapest possible way to get lime to different parts of a country, to different operations. We started looking at using AI and analytics to help people identify the gemstones they've got. You can do 3D photographs even on a phone these days. You can take a 3D photograph of that stone. You can upload it immediately, and there's like analytics that can tell you the type of stone, the color, the quality, the potential value of it, basically immediately. So, and honestly, the opportunities are just unbelievable. It's a wonderful industry for people like yourselves to jump into, because it's one of the slowest moving industries in the world, and it's still run by a lot of people who are very stuck in the old ways. So the opportunities are there. People can see it, but they don't do it. But it's a huge opportunity, massive opportunity for the younger generation to come in and to take over and help out the industry.
It's very true. You hire different geologists from different places in the world or different formations or universities. These are expensive samples, as we've said. Being able to be as specific as possible is very important from a image recognition standpoint, and also a data analytics and predictive sampling. That's where we see AI playing a big part. Do you believe that having an AI like unified ecosystem that's doing these analytics, do you believe that could truly drive a larger return on investment or even potentially secure additional funding from investors?
We are open for anyone who wants to work with us. We've got great data. We've got great opportunity to connect not just data, but with real life examples and ground proofing and all of that. But honestly, the opportunity is huge. One of the biggest challenges we have is the quality of data. There are so many studies being done, so many drill holes being done, so many different angles taken to the same data. How can we get to the raw data and make sure the raw data is of quality, so that you can then use that to build your models on, not just interpreted models that people use. But again, it's there to be mined, the data, and to be analyzed and to use the latest technology on. Absolutely, mining is at the source of basically everything that we do in the world. It's one of the industries that I think has got the largest opportunity in terms of creating new efficiency and better understandings of data, because I compare it to agriculture. I'm also a farmer at heart. Large farmers are using data and using precision equipment and precision farming way better than a lot of mining companies use in extracting the ore or the metal or the products out of the ore. And mining is there for the taking, for people that can get into it. And I think it's gonna happen sooner rather than later. We've been sitting on this for years now. I was Chief Technology Officer at South 32 in 2016 or somewhere there, nearly a decade ago, and we couldn't really get the industry to move back then. But I think a lot's happened between in the last 10 years, and I think a huge amount will happen going forward. And you see people like Bill Gates and Elon Musk and people like that getting involved in mining in different ways. And I think that's gonna create a new generation of businesses that will get born in the next decade to make whatever we mine more efficient, because we need that. We need to become more efficient in how we use water. Whatever we have in tailings and in waste dumps, we call them waste dumps, but they still have value. Technology must be developed to mine those as well and to get the most out of that. And one of the key elements for that is actually cheap energy. If you have a low grade material, to get the metal out, you just need more energy normally to get it out. If you've got cheap renewable energy that you can apply to that, then you can actually go and mine some of these lower grade tailings dumps out there. So yeah, I think huge opportunity.
Elon Musk, I'm pretty sure he wants to do mining in Mars. So I love it. These are very incredible services and an incredible potential for anyone who is in the mining industry. If someone wanted to discover your resources, mine Hive, or get in touch with you or your partner, how could they find you? What is the best way to reach you or contact you?
Best way is you can go to LinkedIn. You'll find me, Ricus Grimbeek. I'm there. Basically, I think I'm the only one. I haven't seen any clones yet, but you'll see their faces on there. So if it's not, if the one on the Ricus Grimbeek on LinkedIn doesn't look like me, it's not me.
Oh, I
But
see.
that's a good one. And then my partner, Brooke Bibolt, if you go to our website, makerresources.com, you'll also be able to get our contact details there. Yeah, I'd love to have a chat to anyone who's interested to see how they can participate in this. I'd love to have a chat.
I love it. We're going to go ahead and leave your website and your LinkedIn and your partner's LinkedIn in the comments below. Thank you so much, Ricus, for the wonderful conversation. Hope to have you here again, and thank you to our audience. Please, thank you so much for listening, and see you next week. We'll see you in the next one.